everyone. It's Alicia, and welcome back to the Eat Me podcast. Happy New Year. I don't know if I said that here on the podcast. Hold on one second, y'all. If you're looking at this on YouTube, you're going to see me pulling this. Oh, there's like some lint here on the mic here. Yikes. Right. Hold on here. Okay. And there we are. All right. We're all fixed. Happy New Year. Like I said, I don't know if I said that to y'all previously, but I know the new year has started off pretty wild for some people. So, um, and a lot of unfortunate things have happened. Sending prayers to those in California, those who have lost homes, those who are, basically displaced at this time, whether their home has been completely burned down or any type of damage. I know some people are still in a space where, oh, excuse me, they're in an evacuation area. So, because of that, they can't go back to their homes just for the sake of, precaution, to be on the safe side. So sending lots of love and prayers. And I will provide some information on resources if you need to, or if you want to rather, help those over there in California, provide any type of resources. If I'll look for some things here that are reputable, and share that with you all if you are looking for um, organizations that are helping individuals over there. So, like I said, many prayers to those in California at this time. But shifting gears, I was in a space of just trying to figure out, what I wanted to do really this year for myself as it relates to my health journey. Um, as many of you all know, I started this podcast because I've always had um, issues around eating. And I've gotten better and better with how I navigate my eating. Um, and this podcast has been a blessing because, I've talked to so many different people about what it's like in their particular field as it relates to eating or, just overall health. And so it's helped me in various ways. Even those who don't have an actual profession in something that relates to our eating habits, other things that we don't think about contribute to how we actually consume. And, eating is a physical consumption, but there are other things that we consume that also affect that then would lead us to overeating or maybe restricting or whatever that looks like because of the different things that we've consumed, from media, from friends and family that may be negative or toxic or whatever that looks like. And so this year I was like, I really need to be more mindful, not going, and going cold turkey on this, but just being more mindful and monitoring how I consume sugar. And if you know me, if you know me really well, sugar is, it's like one of my things. I love me some sugar. And I was like, I wonder how many more people are on that journey with wanting to reduce their sugar intake. And they just want more information about what sugar is really doing to our bodies. So, of course, y'all know I went on my rabbit hole of wanting to get more information. And I found some really cool articles, one from the American Heart Association, and I will tag both of these articles in this episode or in the show notes, rather. And this particular article from the American Heart Association, it is titled, How Much Sugar is Too Much, right? And, it goes through the thing and just basically telling us, the obvious. We know we consume, or I'll say me, because I can't say you, because some people are doing, they're not consuming sugar in ways that a lot of people are. But I know for me, I know I consume a lot of sugar, and it is what it is. But basically, this article goes through the percentages of the major sugar sources that we are actually consuming from, and giving you percentages of, how much additional sugar we're adding to our daily consumption. So it basically says many of us consume too much sugar, obviously, right? Adults and young adults in the U.S. consume on average about 17 teaspoons of added sugar every day, more than 2 to 3 times the recommended daily allowance for men and women, respectively. And it basically says this adds up around to 60 pounds, y'all, of added sugar consumed annually. Like 60 pounds of sugar? What? And that's 6 pounds. That's 6 10 pound bowling balls, basically what they're saying. And I was just like, wow, that's annually. That's not like, you know, in 5 years. Like every year, you are possibly, and sometimes more if you think about it, especially if you're a sugar person like me, it's probably, I would say, probably double that. Let's just keep it real. Um, but if I'm doubling this 20-pound bowling balls that I'm like consuming every year, that's intense. And that's sugar, right? That's like, what am I doing to myself? So this basically goes through the percentages of sugar. So for me, let me backtrack. For me, the sugar thing has always been a thing. I grew up in a home where we ate a lot of sweets. Uh, I, come from people who cook really, really well and they bake well. And I had an aunt we called Amy, and she was that girl. Like she made all things sweet, pretty much. Her caramel cake, for those who are from Evansville, Indiana, particularly in the Black um, community, you knew Amy had a bomb caramel cake, and she would sell that cake, and and sometimes she would, I think sometimes she would give it out. I don't know, but knowing her, she was probably, look, where's my coin? Let's be serious. But she made amazing caramel cake, cookies, all types of different things that were so good. She made a really great blackberry cobbler, which was one of my favorites because I love blackberries. And so, I just grew up around this. My mother made amazing peach cobbler. Like my aunt, Dorothy, she made really good pies. Oh my gosh. Another cookie we loved, we called them Mexican wedding cookies. I found out they were actually called snowballs. The point of it is, I grew up around particularly women who made really good and actually amazing baked goods. And we all lived within walking distance. So I could go to this person's house and get this. And you know what? So you always were just inundated with something, some type of sugar substance. And if there weren't actual baked goods, there was candy, right? So we were always eating something sugary. And then of course that led to me, wanting to always eat sugar. Like my thing, especially growing up, um, Little Debbie cakes. And listen, I don't know if y'all know anything about Little Debbie cakes, but they were my jam, particularly the zebra cakes and the Nutty Buddy. Is it Nutty Buddy? Called Nutty Bars. The point of it is, was the peanut butter chocolate. So it was a chocolate coating on top of like a peanut butter like cookie. And sometimes they had like the wafer ones too. Listen, fire, so good. And so like I've always, that was always my thing. Always loving sweets, and even to this day. But what's strange is like I'm not really a sugary drink person. Like I can't do without the sugar in my drinks. But some people, that's their thing. Like that's their jam. Soda. Like, well, when we go back, I used to drink a lot of soda. Like Pepsi was my jam. Loved Pepsi. And then I, um, s- you know, moved away from drinking so much soda. Actually, I really don't even drink soda anymore. I don't even know the last time I actually drank a soda, honestly, or pop, where I'm from. People are probably like, people who are from Evansville are probably like, what are you talking about, soda? Pop? You mean pop? Yeah. I drank pop a lot growing up. And I always tell people, it's like, I don't ever remember drinking water. And if you understand like where I'm coming from, if you think about it, especially if you're around my age, I'm 46. So people 46 and older, maybe even younger than me, like you might recall that. Like think about like, oh, we didn't drink water. We drank soda or pop, right? We drank pop, we drank tea, Kool-Aid, lemonade. You know what I'm saying? Like we didn't really like water was the thing that actually made the drinks that we wanted to drink that with all the added sugar, right? So it's been an evolution for me with the drinking of sweet things. Yeah, I really try to shy away from it now. But like I said, I wanted to learn more, and that's why I'm here now talking to y'all. So that's why I had to backtrack and give you a little backstory where we're coming from. So going back to this article, the American Heart Association's article, it was titled "How Much Sugar is Too Much." So they say the numbers are in, meaning the percentages of sugar, added sugar that we consume from these things. So sugar sweetened beverages um, are like 24% additional to what we actually should be having in our diets. This is added beyond what we're suggested to have, right? Soft drinks are 16%, fruit drinks are 5%, the sports energy drinks 2%, and the other sources are 1%. So that adds up to that whole 24% percentage of the added sugar that is consumed. Desserts, which that's me, and the sweet snacks, 19%. And then it breaks it down to like cookies, ice cream, like, how much of the consumption that's happening there. Other sources, 19%, coffee and tea, 11%, candy, 9%, which I'm actually shocked at because I think a lot of people eat a lot of candy. Am I wrong? I could be wrong. But breakfast cereal, 7%, higher fat milk and sweetened yogurt, 4%. And it's so wild, like to think of it in that way, especially if you're a percentage type of person or you're a data based thinking person. It's like, oh, I'm adding this much more to my daily consumption. This is really intense. Um, but then it's like, okay, now that I have this information, what am I going to do with it, right? And I think for me, it takes me down the rabbit hole beyond that. It's like, what is it really? Okay, so I'm adding this percentage more to my body. Fine, whatever. Okay, great. Leash. So what do I do with this information, right? Look at how this is really affecting your body. And I loved this particular part of the article. I'm going to read it out to you. So it says, how does the body react to sugar? And that was really my thing. That was the reason why I was like, okay, I need to really understand what sugar is doing to my body. Because it's one thing to like something that tastes good, blah, blah, blah. But am I causing more damage? Obviously. But what is it really doing? Right. And so here it is. It says, it all comes down to how fast sugar gets absorbed into our bodies, right? So, for example, your body spends more time digesting an apple than regular soda. Apples contain fiber, so the natural sugars absorb more slowly. The added sugar in the soda, however, it hits your system all at once, absorbing sugars much more quickly. A 12-ounce can of soda can contain 10 teaspoons, y'all, basically 42 grams to added sugar, nearly double the recommended amount of a day for women, more than the total daily amount for men. And so there's that, right? So what is that daily recommended amount for us? So for men, no more than 9 teaspoons. For women, no more than 6 teaspoons. So for men, 9 teaspoons, that's 36 grams or 150 calories of added sugar per day. For women, 6 teaspoons, 25 grams or 100 calories per day. And so we know that. I want to go back to the how it's going to react to our bodies. Let's table that for a bit, but I wanted to let you know we're going to talk more in depth about that because that was really my issue. But now I kind of want to shift to when we're going grocery shopping. What do we do with this information, right? We want to look for things that are added into our foods. Reading food labels is crucial when it comes to this. And you want to look for things that you may not even think of looking for because you just don't know that these things could be causing additional or being part of that added sugar component. So it says in this article, there's a lot of confusing information out there. So it's basically what should you look for when you're going grocery shopping. It says studies show that 68% of shoppers come across conflicting nutritional data on social media, and 60% of them doubt their choices they are making for their families due to conflicting information. So it's tempting to look at alternative sugars, um, which often can be perceived as healthier choices than plain white sugar. Don't be fooled. Added sugar is added no matter what it is called. That's intense for me. Check out the ingredient list of these added sugars. And the top one, which is like, whoa, actually the top three for me, I'm like, whoa. Because I was like, I was that person like, oh, even though I'm adding these, they're good. They're healthy, y'all, right? Honey being the top one, maple syrup, coconut sugar. Those three for me, I'm like, oh, I always thought those were good. And not that they're not good, but it's like you're adding the sugar. So be mindful, right? Not cut it out. Like I was saying at the top of this podcast episode, be mindful of how much consumption. Uh, t- uh turbinado sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and then dextrose. Um, the article goes on to say food manufacturers are now required to list the amount of added sugars on nutritional facts label in grams and as a percent on daily value. A recent analysis found that this labeling could potentially prevent nearly 1 million cases of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes over the next 2 decades. Listing the total amount of added sugar means that consumers can easily determine how much sugar added, or added sugar rather, is in a food or beverage. This information helps shoppers make smart choices. So bottom line, read nutritional labels and the ingredients list for terms that simply mean added sugar. And like I said before, this was like a little like whoa for me because it's like, wow, this idea of thinking that, incorporating things like honey and maple syrup and coconut sugar are going to be, my saving grace. I can stop my sweets at the same amount that I was before is like, no, you can't consume that sugary, taste and feel just because now it's honey or just now because it's maple syrup or coconut sugar. You still need to be mindful of how much you're consuming. And so for that alone, that was eye opening, just to know that, y'all. And I don't know if that, it has you thinking in the same way that I'm thinking, but it's like, oh, all this time I was in this mindset of, oh, I can still, I'm cheating the system. And it's like, no, you're not. You're still to some degree. So just being mindful and being aware and being educated, it's so, so important. So as we go on to basically the main crux of why I wanted to talk to you about all this today is what is sugar doing to our bodies? I found a really great article from Eating Well. I like this actual publication. They always have some really good articles as it relates to eating. So this one from Eating Well, it is what happens to your body when you cut out sugar. I was like, oh, tell me more, right? And so in this article, it goes through all the things as it relates to how sugar um, affects your body, this, that, and the other. It goes through the things of like, you'll reach your weight loss goals when you're cutting out, additional sugar, decrease the risk of diabetes. And also your skin aging process will slow down. You'll be less likely to get sick. Sugar cravings will decrease. You'll lower your risk for depression and cognitive decline, which was really, it hit me pretty hard because I have had so many people in my family who've had cognitive decline um, due to complications of, other health issues, but also knowing that they consumed a lot of sugar and wondering if that was, a reason why the cognitive decline was so rapid. I don't know, but it's just something to think about, right? Um, yeah, and I'll come back to that. Another thing was your appetite and hunger will decrease. You'll have more energy. Your heart and brain will be healthier. You'll get fewer cavities. And I actually had a podcast episode um, with Dr. Evie, who was my dentist at the time. She talked about this, about the cavities. So if you get a chance to listen to that podcast episode, definitely take a listen to that as well. But I wanted to go back to um, the idea of like you getting less sick, as well as decrease in your risk of diabetes. Because I wanted to talk about what that looks like, um, consuming the sugar and the links to diabetes. Because so many people are, they're like, oh, you know, at least I know people in my family, they wouldn't even call it diabetes. They're just like, oh, I got the sugar. And so I wanted to kind of talk more about this particular section because I thought it's so important for people to understand. Yes, sugar is related to the diabetes, type 2 diabetes risk. It's a risk factor for type 2 diabetes. But I really want to like really give people more of an a breakdown, if that makes sense. So this part of the article says studies have shown that high sugar consumption, especially of sweetened beverages, can increase the odds of developing type 2 diabetes. Okay. Scientists explain this in a large part by that by the weight that people gain when they consume lots of calories in the form of added sugar. Being categorized as overweight or obese is often accompanied by problems with blood sugar control and reduced sensitivity to insulin that leads to type 2 diabetes. So, for those who are, what is considered overweight, you know, I've been in that category for majority of my life. Um, a lot of it is an issue of blood sugar control. Because at a certain point, when you're constantly flooding your body with sugar, your pancreas is then telling your body, okay, we've got to get rid of the sugar. We got to balance out everything again. Okay, let's, you know, send out the insulin, which is actually created by way of the pancreas, and let's get ourselves together. Now imagine your body doing that constantly. Like, okay, bring the reinforcements in, and like this is over and over again, and this is not something that's supposed to happen like consistently, like all day, every day. But the way we consume things that would cause this, that's what's happening in a lot of our bodies. So that issue with blood sugar control, because it's up and down, it leads to things like obesity and being overweight, and it leads to an insulin resistance uh, um, um, over time. And so or reduced sensitivity to insulin, I should say. So basically, your body, after a while, it's like, okay, here comes the insulin, fine, whatever. But but it's not responding in the ways that it should because we have, basically worn it out, worn it out as it relates to how it normally functions, and so that leads to that sense of obesity, and you becoming overweight, and then here you are, you're moving into the category of type 2 diabetes. So then the article goes on and says cutting added sugars makes it easier to manage weight and to keep blood sugar levels within healthy parameters, both of which lower your diabetes risk. This stems from the fact that added sugar helps fuel cyclical cascade of effects that cause metabolic and hormonal changes that increase the risk of diabetes. Added sugar contributes excess calories. Excess calorie intake leads to weight gain. Weight gain, along with high blood glucose levels from consuming added sugar, leads to insulin resistance, which is basically what I was saying to y'all earlier. Insulin resistance leads to more weight gain. So basically, everything I just said before, I guess I could have just read the paragraph for y'all, but you get what I'm saying. But the reverse is also true. In a systemic review and a metabolic analysis, it was found that substituting low to no calorie sweetened beverages for sugar sweetened beverages contributed to reduced body weight and reduced percentages of body fat. So cutting added sugar is a key factor in stopping the cycle and slashing your risk. It's just it seems so simple, right? Um, but it's and as you read these things, like, oh yes, you're informed, so, okay, blah blah blah. But now it's like putting the actual things in motion. That's where things get a little tricky for me. But I want to go down and talk. We'll talk more about like how we put all this into play, right? I want to go down to this part where it says you'll be less likely to get sick when reducing sugar. Um, because I don't know that people really correlate sugar consumption with illness. So this says chronic low grade inflammation has been linked to nearly every major disease of lifestyle and aging, including arthritis, GI disorders, and metabolic syndrome. In a study looking at data from over 5,000 adults and individuals with prediabetes, intake of sugar, sweetened beverages increased the change of having elevated levels of C-reactive protein, a key marker in inflammation. Chronic inflammation is an unhealthy and abnormal immune reaction in the body that leads to an overworked immune system, and added sugars are a key diet component known to exacerbate this type of inflammation. Research on the relationship between added sugars and inflammation found that excessive intake can increase inflammation. Cutting out added sugars can help minimize existing inflammation as well as prevent new inflammation. This improves overall immune function so the body can effectively fight off pathogens, reducing your susceptibility to illness. I think number 4, to me, is probably one of the most important. I think when it comes to our immune systems, we have not been educated enough on how important it is to maintain a healthy immune system. Regardless if it's, reducing your sugar intake, promoting more gut health based education, eating more fiber, uh, drinking more water, getting more rest, eating more fruits and vegetables. I mean, you name it, all the things that could potentially create better outcomes with our immune systems. We have not been given enough information on that. And I think now is the time more than ever that we really need to hunker down on how we prevent illness as best as we can. I mean, to say that you're not ever going to get sick from something, okay, that's kind of crazy. But to do it in a way where it's like, okay, I could possibly get sick from this, but not as sick as I would be if I were, still, in this practice of eating unhealthy, not getting enough rest, not drinking enough water, or whatever that may look like for you. Have, so much stress in my life. Inflammation is so like wild because when you think about inflammation, there are two types of inflammation that we think of in the body. And there's chronic inflammation, which is what we see with a lot of illness. And then there is acute inflammation, which is something that is actually helping us in so many ways. Because whatever that acute thing that's happened, our body's like, whoop, let's, bring all of that here to help. We're going to do all the things we can do to help this area because it's been injured or whatever that is. And it's one thing to have acute inflammation versus chronic inflammation. Acute inflammation, you definitely want to manage it and try to take care of it as best as you can, but it's also a body response to an injury or something, pretty, intense. Chronic inflammation is similar in some ways, but it's like over time, we are continuously, like, think about it, you're continuously injuring your body in so many ways. Like, when you really stop and think about it, it's like inflammation is like the swelling of an area due to injury in so many words. I mean, there's more to it, but if you think about it and you break it down that simply, it's like I am continuously injuring myself over and over and over again. And this chronic inflammation could be reduced by way of things that are so simple that I just didn't even think about. One, reducing sugar intake, getting more sleep, really monitoring my stress levels, whatever that is. And knowing that I have multiple sclerosis, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people who've listened to the podcast, if it's your first time, welcome, aboard here. But, I've talked about my multiple sclerosis diagnosis, and I've done amazingly well with it. But knowing that this thing is also a contributor to possibly exacerbating my MS, it's in my best interest to reduce the sugar that I'm consuming on a daily basis. And so I just want us to think about that. I like sugar. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna completely stop, eating sugar, but I have to be mindful of how much consumption that I am bringing into my life, knowing that I'm already in a space where I don't want to increase inflammation, because with MS, inflammation is one of the like key markers of, exacerbating it and causing those symptoms that you have to come on even stronger than before. So it's like, really being mindful of how I move forward with, consuming sugar, because I don't want that inflammation to continuously be an issue in my life. And if you don't have anything that you know of that's going on in your body and you're, fairly healthy, but you do consume sugar, think about this. You know, most people who have different health disparities, it's not, have always had it. Something caused it over time. Chronic means something that's constantly taking place, you know? So over time, things develop, whether it be your diet that causes it, diet and environment, diet and stress, diet and whatever. It's now time to be mindful of how we are, one, consuming what we eat, consuming, um, you know, different things that can cause stress in our lives, the people, the places that we go, really just being mindful overall. I think it's super, super important. And like I said, my goal is to really be mindful of my sugar intake this year moving forward. Um, I don't want to be in a position where I have type 2 diabetes. I don't want any heart issues. And those two things are also things that are in my family as well. And so it's just really taking in this information and utilizing it in ways that, I never did before. And it's always important for me to really break down things and understand it in ways that's like, oh, this is what's happening. Gotcha. Now that I know better, I have to do better. And so I hope you are in that same mindset. It's like, now that we know better, we have to do better. And it's not a thing of like everything ends today. We're done. It's a work in progress. It's a journey. And I hope that you are in a space where you can go on this journey as well, where you're constantly looking to better yourself and improve yourself each and every day, whether it be food consumption or whatever it is you're doing. But yeah, 2025 is my year where I need to be so much more mindful of my sugar consumption. I'm not getting any younger, and this body is doing what it's doing. I'm healing. I'm actually healing from a hip injury. So it's like all the things, I don't want to cause more inflammation in that area too. So just really being mindful, y'all. I will share these actual articles in the show notes. I will also share any information I find as it relates to helping those in California as well. Huge, huge love to those over there. I pray that, you know, restoration happens sooner than later. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention those that are also suffering in North Carolina still. And if you didn't know, there's still major issues happening in North Carolina and the whole Appalachia area. Um, so we just can't dismiss that at all. And I will send information about that as well that I find that will be beneficial to help those that are in need there as well. Florida is another place still, in a state of need. And I'll share uh, that as well. If I can find one actual organization, I don't know, I'll see. I'll share it on the show notes. There might be maybe one organization that's like filtering out to each of these places where you can offer assistance. That might be helpful. So I'll take a look and see if I can find that as well. All right, y'all, this is my year. Mindful, not going overboard, not going from 0 to 1,000, but just being mindful um, with my sugar intake. All right, y'all, I love you. And I will see y'all next week. All right. Have a good one. Bye bye.